Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Andrew Roman Show. I just want to give a warm welcome to all of the new listeners. We've had a lot of new subscribers throughout this week. So I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope that this becomes your weekly show where you can listen to a new perspective. You can listen to something that's encouraging because, I was kind of reflecting a couple of days ago. I asked myself this question, Andrew, what is your podcast even about? Have you ever asked yourself that? Because some people have podcasts that are very dedicated on the political realm, which I like. For example, someone like Ben Shapiro, he talks about politics every single day, and that's like the politics guy, right? And then you have someone like Dave Ramsey, the money guy, and you have someone like, my parents, the marriage guys, or the family guys. And I think, who is Andrew? What is the guy of? Honestly, I think my main goal is answering the question, how do you live as a Christian in this world? I think that's it. I'm not saying perfectly, but what does it truly mean to live a life of impact as a Christian and to live a life that makes the difference? Because I'm a Christian. I've said it a lot of times. This is not necessarily like a Christian podcast per se, because not everything that we say is necessarily like Christian, but it's all from a Christian perspective. If that even made sense. It's like a musician, like a rapper. It can be a rapper that is Christian, but he's not necessarily a Christian rapper. He doesn't just talk everything about the gospel. But everything I want to talk about does come, in fact, from a biblical perspective. So one of the reasons that I like that people are listening to this is hopefully it gives you a biblical perspective. It inspires you to make a difference, and it gives you tools to actually address things that are going on today. Because I never talk, and I've said this once and twice, and I'll say this as many times as I need to. I'm never talking from a place like, hey, I've made it. Look at everything I've learned and how I'm applying it perfectly, and here you go. You're my little students. No, not at all. This is actually just called a show because I just share what's on my mind, and you guys tell me what you think. And hey, you might disagree with me at some points. I'm sure you have. That's totally okay because it's called a conversation, right? It's a two-way street. All that to say, I want to say thank you to all of the listeners out there. Hey, I want to give you a shocking news coming up. Shocking news. Cue sad music. I have run out of bugs. I know, I said this a long time ago, and I thought I had run out of bugs, but I know if you're not watching, I'm actually starting to cry a little bit. I think officially I ran out of mugs. I was so tempted to grab a random mug with zero significance out there and make up a story for it, but I ain't fake. We're gonna be talking about being fake today, but I am fake. So, all right, you can stop the sad music, guys. I'm running out of mugs here, so I need your help. If you have a favorite mug, something cool, we've shown actually a couple episodes ago. We showed like a toilet of a mug. It's kind of interesting, or we've shown like a. I think it was like a Mario or some other one. So if you have a favorite mug, make sure to send it over to me. Tell me the backstory. I think it's great. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. All the plugs that I can think about, go ahead and do it. I was thinking about, let me say this. If you're listening to the episode right as a little bit when it comes out, we're actually airing this about a month and a half after the Oscars. Now, the Oscars this year, they had one of the worst ratings, I think. And usually it is because now celebrities have done a great job of taking their time when they take their Oscar and kind of making a political speech, trying to teach us all something about real life. And what's funny is actors are just professional fakers. Now, don't get me wrong. I love movies. But at the end of the day, they're just professional fakers. They actually get paid to be fake. Have you ever thought about that? They can make you think and believe that they're experts at anything. I mean, let's take Matt Damon. I love the Jason Bourne movies, but he ain't really Jason Bourne. Or someone like Chris Evans. I love Captain America. He ain't Captain. I mean, he big as Captain America, that's for sure. Or Chris Hemsworth. He's Thor, but he's not really Thor. He's not really the god of thunder as much as his accent's real, though, and that accent is legit. Or my favorite, Tom Holland, Spider-Man. I'm a Spider-Man fan. I love Tom Holland, but he's not really Spider-Man. So there are a few exceptions to fakers. For example, let's take Tom Cruise. Although Tom Cruise is obviously not Ethan Hunt and maybe as smart and as genius as Ethan Hunt. Definitely does his own stunts. So that's pretty cool to know. But there is a reason why there's a saying, don't meet your heroes. Because at the end of the day, they end up not being who you thought that they were. But the nice thing about being an actor is that you get paid to be fake. Actually, fun fact, I've always wanted to be an actor. I did do some acting in a speech and debate league several years ago. It was called Duo Interpretation. And basically what it was is it was two of you, so that was called Duo, and you would interpret a piece of literature. So that would be a book. So one of my friends, Brooks Clayton, which one day I got to have him on the show. I'm sure he has a lot to say. Brooks and we interpreted the small book of Don Quixote in the Windmills. It was hilarious. We actually won the regional championship, which was really, really cool. So I don't know. One day we got to show that video or something like that. But so I've always wanted to be an actor. But the nice thing about actors is you get paid to be fake. You know who doesn't get paid to be fake? You and me. We don't get paid to be fake. I know you're like, wow, that got real serious, bro. Chill. No, I'm saying this because I think someone listening deserves an Oscar for acting like everything's okay. Yep. Today, I want to talk to you. I want to talk from my heart. I want to encourage you and challenge you because I want to share about 2 ways that you and I can be fake. How we can be professional actors in our lives pretending everything's okay, living double lives, when in fact, it's a waste of time, it's exhausting, and we don't get paid to do it. So you don't actually win an Oscar, but some of us really deserve an Oscar pretending everything's okay. So the number one way that we actually fake the most in our lives is the way that we live. You see, in Jesus' early ministry, one of his main opposers to his mission were the Pharisees. Now, the Pharisees were the religious teachers of the time. This is important to note though, is it's not all the Pharisees that were bad. Some were genuine teachers who wanted to serve God, and they just understood, okay, you have to follow the Torah and all this. And the good part of them, became sadly religious. Like, so there were some that were genuine, but a large part of them, a good part of them, really became religious in a negative sense. They began to care more about performing and looking righteous in front of people instead of actually living and walking a righteous life. There was no life inside of them. Actually, that's why Jesus called them quite burned. I mean, if you thought Trump did nasty tweets, bruh, I don't know. Jesus called people like whitewashed tombs and sons of serpents, and that was pretty intense stuff. I mean, Jesus wasn't playing when he was trying to get out his message, because these Pharisees, they did all the right talk, but they weren't actually backing it up. See, when Jesus spoke out against them, he wasn't speaking out against the rules that they followed, but instead he was speaking against their hearts. Because as we did a whole episode, the tradition of killing tradition, rules and traditions are not bad. It just depends what they're based on, right? Many Pharisees, were fake because although they knew the talk, they didn't actually walk it out. They didn't have the heart of God. Many of them, as you might know some of them, that's right. They can still be Pharisees and not actual Pharisees walking with a robe, but we can have a spirit of a Pharisee, like many of us, that we can sound Christian. We can say the right stuff. We know all the phrases. Come on, you've been to church before. I know how to act like a good church kid. But at the end of the day, if we look at our lives, it doesn't quite reflect it. And there's 2 ways that does it. So point number 1 of how we can be fake is in the way that we live, when our walk doesn't match our talk. This happens a lot, especially if you're raised in church. Dude, you and I both know you know how to sound Christian. I mean, who doesn't? Once you learn Christianese and you say, God bless you, brother, and you say, man, life is so good, I'm so blessed, I'm just in a season right now. You use all those terms, you just sound so spiritual. When in reality, you can live a life, almost a double life, that's completely against God. Because remember, we talked about this a couple episodes ago. Actually, it was titled Don't Move Out. When our unique and distinct trait as Christians is to live a life that pleases God, not just to be better people, that's the consequence of it, but in fact to please God. And God said it himself. when I think he was talking to Saul, right? He spoke through the prophet Samuel to Saul when Saul was just doing sacrifices for God, but he wasn't actually following him. And God said that he prefers obedience over sacrifice. So I want you to think about your life, and I'll think about my own. Are there ways that you've gotten just really good at going to church, at sounding Christian, at sounding like you're spiritual, sounding like you got it, everything together. But in reality, you might be living a double life. You're actually living by your own will. You're actually living to please yourself. We talked about this in sexual purity, for example. You're kind of using your own definitions of sexuality and everything, but at the same time, you're saying, oh, I love God and everything. But in fact, you are just like a Pharisee. Now, I can say that because I've been a million times, and sometimes I continue to be like a Pharisee, someone that can say a lot on the podcast, but then I have to remind myself, oh my gosh, I got to live this out. One of my favorite things about having a podcast is that it actually challenges me to be better. It challenges me to rely on God even more because I realize the pressure that I have. People are listening to my voice and people take me seriously, thankfully. And they say, okay, this guy must know what he's talking about because he has a podcast. That's a lot of pressure, but it kind of pushes me towards God because I look at myself, I'm like, God, I got nothing to give. I'm just a guy that talks a lot. I got a loud mouth. That's about it. And God's like, boom, that's my instrument. Give me that loud mouth. I don't know. If you got a problem with me, talk with God. And I'm just going to try to really rely on God because I ain't got much to say, but hopefully he does. But maybe I'm not the only one that has struggled with this. But you see, Pharisees had two unique traits. One of them was shown with the element of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a principle and actually a commandment that God had given about honoring the Sabbath. And it was more of a principle. He actually did it for us. The Sabbath was for man and not man for the Sabbath. However, the Pharisees said God had gotten really, really religious with the Sabbath to the point that when Jesus healed someone on the Sabbath, they considered that, quote unquote, working and ungodly and sinful. They actually found it hypocritical. And that's when Jesus said and uttered the famous words that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. We've actually done a whole episode. If you want to check it out, it's called the Forgotten Commandment. And it's been, probably several seasons ago, we did a whole episode on that. So check that one out. But I want you to point this out. I was sharing with my mom and she brought up a great point regarding this. The Pharisees were saying, we're teachers of God. We are closest to God. But when it came to the Sabbath, they had this issue with the Sabbath that they were willing to see someone not healed to run over someone's healing and someone's being set free to follow their version in their tradition of the Sabbath. I wonder how many of us, and I think all of us, have that one issue that if people don't agree with us, if people don't follow the way that we think they should follow or think the way that we think they should think, I think we're even willing to run over them. Can I give you one of those? We saw it all last year. One of them was social justice. With the Black Lives Matter movement that happened, especially last year, and all the social justice things that happened, all the hashtags that have come out, a lot of them speak a lot of truth and a lot of them don't. And we've had different episodes to that. And it's obviously a big conversation. I don't want to just say a little thing and then not have time to explain everything. But I've noticed that in social justice, if you don't agree with people, and this happens a lot, and it can happen on the right as well. I want to say that if you're conservatives have their own thing as well. But it happens especially on the very hard left when they say social justice is one of those things, even for Christians that think that if you don't agree with them in every single point of the social justice agenda, then all of a sudden they're willing to run you over just to see their agenda fulfilled. And they become like a Pharisee, that you run over people in order to get your mission done. You lack the heart of God. You just set on your own traditions and your own beliefs. You see, none of our beliefs, ideas do not come before people. Say it again. Ideas do not come before people. And if we're saying that we're Christians, if we're saying that we want to follow God, that we want to follow Jesus, and we're doing this, we being fake. I can admit it in my own life. A lot of times, actually all last year, it's been extremely political, the environment, just at least in the United States. And you see all these posts, and some of them you really disagree with, and some of them are close friends of mine, and I just really disagree with them. But also I have to think in my heart, am I being like a Pharisee right now, where I will stop one issue that I disagree with them, and I will make that be an excuse to judge them, to not love them as much. We've talked about this several times, and changing the world one hug at a time, or not thinking like an intellectual, and all these things. But I want you to be self-reflecting right now, as I am as well. Is there an issue in your life, and by issue I mean like a topic or a certain way of thinking, that you have made your be-all, end-all? That if people do not agree with you, if they don't think like you do, you're willing to even run them over. Emotionally speaking, you're willing to cut them off. May I suggest that's not really the best thing? People come before ideas. Even if those ideas are great, people come before them. There's one more example that how we can be fake. There's a story that Jesus says about Pharisee and the tax collector. You've probably heard it. I'm going to read it from Luke 18, verses 9 through 14. It says this: "To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, 'God, thank you that I am not like other people, robbers, evildoers, adulterers.' And then he looked to the side and he said, 'Or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give a tenth of all I get.' But the tax collector stood up at a distance. He wouldn't even look up to the heaven, but he beat his breast and said, 'God, have mercy on me, a sinner.' I tell you the truth. This man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be exalted." We all know this story, or at least if you grew up in church, and it's usually, the word Pharisee is usually applied to people who are too religious. Oh, you're too religious. You're just like a Pharisee, and you look down on other people. And I've seen this as an accusation to people who are more traditional in church. And, oh, you're just like a Pharisee. You're too traditional. You know what can happen, though? Is a lot of us can have that Pharisee spirit when we think that, oh, thank God I'm not like that Pharisee. See, there's a lesson to be learned here. Because the same way that the Pharisee pointed the finger at the tax collector, we can point the finger at the Pharisee, and the circle just keeps on going. The whole point is to humble ourselves. So we can be fake in our saying that we want to represent God, when at the same time we're just trying to justify ourselves in our own value and exalt ourselves, is what the Bible says, by putting other people down. So that way that you can be fake is by, like we just talked about, by not living, not walking the talk, and having like that one topic that you don't care about people anymore because it's just people just disagree with you there, whether it be political, whether it be emotional, whatever it is. And then other things is that we can be judgmental towards others, and that's being a fake Christian. That's not being like Jesus. The second way that we can be fake is we can be fake in the struggle. And this is where I'll spend most of my time near the end of this episode. You see, when you're having maybe doubts about your faith, or maybe you're struggling right now, there's something inside of you that doesn't feel right. Maybe you feel a little bit down, maybe you feel depressed, maybe anxious, maybe you feel some doubts about who you are, about what you're meant to do, about your faith. Is the Bible real? Is God even real? Is the way I've been taught even real? And you've had that struggle within yourself. It's easy to keep all your thoughts to yourself and then act like everything's okay. And people just believe you. I mean, some of us, we're good at that, right? We deserve an Oscar. We're great at just saying, amen. Are you okay? We're great at showing up to youth group and smiling and saying amen to everything, but at the end of the day, not really believing it. And I've noticed that people usually finally get honest once they've made up their minds about something, not really in the struggle. You see this especially when someone, for example, comes out as gay. When someone struggles with their identity, they're not really sure if they are who people tell them that they are. Maybe there's something else. And a lot of times, not always, those thoughts are just kept to yourself because you're thinking through them, right? You're not sure. You don't want to be embarrassed. Maybe your surroundings are not very welcoming, so you just want to keep it to yourself. And then finally, when you've made your decision, you say, I just want to be honest. I just want to be transparent. And then you say, I come out, I'm gay, or you know what, I just don't believe in the Bible anymore. I don't believe as a Christian anymore, or whatever you want to say. And it's usually finally when you've made your decision that you become honest. What about being honest and transparent in the struggle? When you're having doubts about your faith, when you're wondering, gosh, am I gay? Am I not? Am I, as even some people might say, what are my pronouns? What am I transgender? I'm feeling a little uncomfortable in my body. All those thoughts, all those doubts. Why not be honest in the struggle instead of after you've thought it through? Because can I be honest with you? We can't handle everything by ourselves. When we're going through something, having insecurities about who we are and depression and all that, we can feel like it's all just through happening in our minds and then coming to a decision, and it can be overwhelming. And we think that if we're left to our own thoughts, we'll come to a sane conclusion. Hey, if being left in your own thoughts was something healthy, then solitary confinement wouldn't be a punishment. But it's a punishment for a reason. Because you go crazy, because you become an echo chamber of your own thoughts. Take the Psalms as an example. The Psalms are full of vulnerable and raw emotions. In fact, Ecclesiastes, for example, deals with and struggles with the meaning of life and recognizes that sometimes life can feel meaningless. The prophets struggled with the reality of pain and in suffering in the world with a good God. Have you ever struggled with your faith? I want to ask you honestly. No one's listening. Do you struggle sometimes believing? Do you struggle with who you are? Do you struggle with maybe if you even have a purpose? You're not the first. I want to say that genuinely. You're not the first to have that struggle, which means you don't have to walk through it alone. Someone does understand. See, it's interesting that the biblical writers, although they struggled with understanding, they never struggled with believing in God and His goodness. Never did any prophet or writer doubt the existence of God because of the existence of evil. They had a hard time understanding, but they never doubted His existence. It's only humans that made those things like that they can't exist at the same time. They struggled, but they were trying to understand. And it is in faith that, well, we won't fully understand everything. If you're having some struggles in your faith, I just want to tell you, if we could understand everything about God, then I guess we would be God ourselves. That doesn't mean that there are not things that we can't understand and that there are answers to our doubts and all that. Of course there are. So where does that leave us? If you have questions, if you have doubts about who you are, about your purpose, can I be honest? Don't try to figure it out by yourself. Jesus warns us in Matthew 6:23. He says, but if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Which means is this, when your eyes are unhealthy, what does that mean? Remember that the Psalms say that the Bible is a light unto my path. Without Jesus, we are in darkness. You might think you're wise, but instead it's actually folly. Without Jesus, there is no such thing as heavenly wisdom. Even earthly wisdom, that just comes back void. But God's word never comes back void. And if you think with that, without Jesus or without the Bible, you at least have some light inside of you, Jesus says this, if the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? And I get it. Maybe you're thinking right now saying, Andrew, you're making it sound so easy. Just open up. Just say you're struggling. I know that there isn't always a welcoming environment to open up. I get that. But find one. Create one. I'll be the one for you. Shoot me a DM. Share with me your story. I'll pray for you. I'll walk with you. I'll connect you to someone that can walk with you as well. That's why there's the church body. Because sometimes we're looking for a perfect opportunity to open up, but there won't ever be a perfect opportunity. We actually have to find that and even make that ourselves. So you're probably wondering, Did you win the Oscar? I don't know. That's up to you. Let me get my my Oscar paper. And the Oscar for being fake goes to me. The Oscar of sometimes not living the way you talk goes to me. But God's grace is there. If you feel like you deserved an Oscar, I guess all of us do. If you feel like you won an Oscar, there's hope, because God never wants us to be fake. He wants us to be true with Him, true with others, and true with ourselves. Because when we are, we can find freedom and live that abundant life that Jesus promised. So don't live a double life. And especially if you're struggling right now, open up to your parents if it's a safe environment. Open up to someone that can give you biblical advice. Send me a DM and I'll connect you to something. And that's why the church is there. So I want to encourage you, although you deserve an Oscar, and so do I, God wants to give us a different type of Oscar. Not one of acting, but one of being and playing a true portrayal of Jesus. Hey, we'll see you in the next episode of The Andrew Ramon Show.